tariff hikes can trigger a bond crisis for importers. Dan Swartz is Tariffs and Customs Principal with Crowe. Hello, Dan.
Hey, Robert.
Thank you for being with me. So, Dan, explain the use of customs surety bonds to facilitate the release of imported goods.
Yeah, you bet. Most importers enter into an agreement with U.S. Customs through a intermediary, a surety, through the establishment of a customs bond. And this allows flexibility for the importer to take their goods from the port after customs release and take them back to their facility. But part of the bond agreement is that the importer can be forced to return the goods to the port should there be an issue.
Mhm.
In addition to that, the U.S. Customs provides the importer an opportunity to make payment for duty after the goods are even released. There's a 10-day period in which duties are owed to customs. So the goods can actually be on the truck and on their way to your facility without you even having to pay customs. So
Okay.
the bond itself acts as an insurance policy for U.S. Customs should you, the importer, fail in your ability to pay U.S. Customs the duty that's owed. Customs then turns their eyes and looks at the bond surety for them to pay up.
Okay, well, the bond has a limit, however, on it. So, what problems come up when the tariff rates surge, especially over a short period? What is the connection there?
Yeah, you bet. So you're right. The bonds have a limit. And the way the bond limit is calculated, it's 10% of your estimated import duties, fees, and taxes are owed during a 12-month period, which sounds great, not a problem until you start raising tariffs. And then that bond limit can quickly become saturated, meaning that your bond could become insufficient. There's just not enough to cover the duty liability that you owe, at which time the bond surety will issue insufficiency notices and advise you that you need to either procure a new bond to cover the growing balance that you owe, or if you have a small dollar bond, you may even be able to adjust the value of that bond limit on the bond.
Hmm.
But in either case, what the big problem that importers are running into now, Bob, is that these bond limits, a lot of companies are going to be receiving insufficiency notices within the next couple of weeks, because particularly with the China tariffs being so high. And when they go back and have conversations with the bond surety, they're likely to be in a situation where they're going to have to put up collateral.
Hmm. Is this prior to the arrival of where are the goods in question, if indeed there are goods at this moment when the insufficiency notice is sent from the bond surety?
They can be at the port
Hmm.
and incurring storage while you try to sort out the bond issue with the surety, which in a week or two from now, I imagine these bond sureties are going to be pretty darn busy. So you're going to be basically taking a number and hoping that they can help you out fairly quickly. But you may incur significant storage as a result of your cargo sitting there at the port waiting for a new customs bond to replace the prior one.
Right. So if I'm an importer and I get these insufficiency notices, what do I have to do to avoid a potential halt in importing activities altogether?
Well, getting on the phone, having a conversation with the bond surety as soon as possible is definitely the right step. Alternatively, there may be an opportunity to be able to present payment of duties, fees, and taxes at the time of entry, but there may be limits on that because of the additional exposure that customs takes on. But really, I think what I'm most concerned about, and I had a conversation with a client today, they historically have had two of their suppliers act as the importer of record to bring in rather high value product into the United States. And they found out today that both of those suppliers no longer want to be the importer of record. And so
Hmm.
their $500,000 bond now is unfortunately going to have to go significantly higher to cover the additional duties that these vendors have been paying for all these years. And as a result, when you go to the surety, the surety talks to the underwriter, and again, they're going to require that you present audited financials. They're going to take a look through those financials, and if they see anything that is a risk to them, such as you don't have a good cash flow position, that you're debt heavy, that there's other anomalies in your financial statements, you're going to be asked to put up collateral. The collateral can be upwards of 110% of your bond limit. So
Wow.
imagine you're sitting on a $250,000 bond and you're got an insufficiency notice, and now you're looking at maybe trying to get a $500,000 bond. Well, you may be having to pony up a $500,000 and park that in a bank under a letter of credit for upwards of a year or longer
Oh
until
my
you get the
goodness.
money back.
Yeah. So what might be other ripple effects in terms of obtaining these supplemental bonds, or what I guess is known as bond stacking, with regard to scrutiny from the underwriter?
Here's the real issue with bond stacking, is that you take out an initial bond, it becomes saturated, it becomes insufficient. So then you take out another bond. Well, now because you're asking for more money under that new bond, the underwriters could probably require you to put up some collateral. And that's just a reality. And so you park that collateral in the bank. And then if that bond becomes insufficient, and now you're having to take out a third or maybe fourth bond, what you could have happen is that you're parking all this cash in a bank for these multiple bonds, but it could be years before you can touch any of that money again because you
Boy,
have to wait until the entries liquidate with US Customs. All the entries liquidate under that bond before you can see any of that collateral back.
I imagine a lot of importers simply do not have those reserves to park that much money. It's not working for them for that long a time, right?
The other issue is that for companies who don't have those cash reserves, and then they turn and they look at their foreign vendor and say, hey, can you become the importer of record and take on this responsibility? Some vendors are willing to do it, but the problem they run into is being a foreign non-resident importer. Uh, Getting a bond is becoming increasingly more difficult for them as well. Uh, you know, the financial aspect of it, financial statements and reviewing their financial position, it makes it more difficult for the underwriters to want to extend that bond liability out to a foreign non-resident that, especially if they don't really have much in the way of a presence here in the United States.
And that foreign entity might itself have reserve limitations that
Exactly.
prevents it from taking on this burden any more than the importer would be taking it on. Okay, so this is a scary situation, Dan. How then can importers deal with this possibility of a so-called bond insufficiency meltdown?
Unfortunately, I don't know if there's really much of a way of avoiding this.
No.
A this is really a symptom of a larger issue.
Mhm.
And the larger issue being that we have a significant increase on tariffs, particularly with China, in a relatively short period of time. That's going to put a tremendous strain on the bond limits for these importers. And there's not a lot of room to navigate around that. I think from a supply chain perspective, companies may have to look at spreading out some of their import transactions. They may have to look at alternative ways of what they're ordering. I think people are going to really have to start looking at alternative sources to purchase goods, instead of just relying on on China and just saying, "Hey, we're going to pay the high tariff." Well, the downstream effect of that is that you may not be able to afford the bond to be able to get those goods. So you may be forced in a position of looking at alternative countries to source your goods.
And even if you could temporarily absorb that additional cost, you're probably going to have to pass it on to your customers, which would just kill your presence in markets, I think, in a lot of cases, make you non-competitive. So
Correct.
it
Yeah,
just hits you in so many directions.
it does. It does hit you in a lot of directions. And I know everybody's attention has really been on the tariff side of it, but I've been increasingly concerned about the bond side of this and the potential impact importers are going to be facing here, I think within about 2 weeks, two
Yeah,
to 3 weeks from now.
any time now. And then again, interest rates and the ability of willingness of banks to issue letters of credit might also be an issue there at some point too, right?
That's correct. Yeah, cost of capital, I think ranges anywhere between 7 and 9% on average. So it's not cheap
Wow.
money out there right now.
Well, it's been an education these last few minutes, Dan, that there are a lot more implications to the tariff hikes than simply the level of the tariff. Thank you very much for enlightening us and maybe just scaring us in a little bit, but in a way, but it's good to know. So thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate you joining me today.
You bet. Thank you.